Hello, my name is Oliver and I'm a trans guy who just came back home to cold Sweden after 2 epic weeks traveling through India. And I want to make a video to share some of my experiences of traveling as a trans guy in India. First, some disclaimers. These are of course only my experiences. If you're thinking of traveling to India as a transgender person, please look at other resources as well, because these are, as I said, only my experiences. The second thing is I traveled through very touristy area. I traveled to something that generally is called like the tourist triangle of India. I visited Delhi, Agra and Jaipur. So people there are very used to tourists, and I think that they see tourists with very gender expressions and of different sexualities and stuff. So they're probably a bit more used to it than people might be in the rural areas. And Delhi is also a huge city where people are also very used to these things. A third disclaimer maybe is that I have traveled a lot in the past, and I've traveled to like difficult places before. I've backpacked in Southern Africa and Central Asia and stuff like that. So just keep that in mind. If you've only been to, I don't know, Paris before, maybe the way you will experience India is very different from the way I experience India. I hope that makes sense. So the first thing I want to talk about, and the first thing that I noticed when I came there, like as soon as I left the airport, was that people gender you so much. Like they call you miss, sir, ma'am, all the time, wherever you go. And we don't do this in Sweden, so I was very unused to this. And what happened to me, like I'm in this very awkward stage of my transition when some people perceive me as a guy, some people perceive me as a girl. Like I float in between. It's very awkward, and of course I just wish that everyone saw me as a guy, but I'm not there yet. So what happened was that I would walk on the street and someone would call me sir, and the next second someone will call me miss, and the next second someone called me ma'am, and the next second someone called me young boy, like people trying to get me into their stores and stuff like that. Or like when entering a taxi, someone said good morning sir, or you know, everywhere I went people kept calling me these titles. And that makes me uncomfortable for many different reasons. One, of course, because people kept calling me ma'am or miss, and that's very dysphoric, knowing that people perceive me as that. So that sucked. But it's also very, you know, just uncomfortable for me being called by these titles when I'm not used to it. So I wasn't comfortable, you know, saying someone, it's sir actually, when it's like I would prefer them just not using these formal titles. But at the same time, I didn't know how to react when someone called me miss, because these are also usually very short interactions with people and you don't have time to correct everyone. But there was also something a bit euphoric for me with this, because at home, I mean, all of my friends and colleagues and everything call me like by my correct name and pronouns, but I always think that they do this to be kind to me. They do this because they know that I want them to, not because they actually perceive me as a guy. And this is very like internalized in me. But when I was there and like strangers calling me sir, not all the time, but like a lot of times, that was kind of euphoric for me to realize that, oh, I actually pass. Not all the time, but sometimes. And that was, I think, actually the first time that I felt like, ooh, strangers actually perceive me as a guy. So that was euphoric in the same time as it was very dysphoric. The second thing I want to talk about is the separate security lines that are so widespread in India. So India takes security really seriously. When entering a mall or a monument or a cinema, like any train stations, airports, any big public building, there is a security check to enter. And the security checks are always divided between men and women. And there are always 2 security guards working there, and you will be checked by the security guard that matches your gender. And this shocked me a bit, because this has actually never happened to me before. Of course, I went to like the gents or the queue for the men, and doing that felt weird and a bit scary. And sometimes there would be like guards guiding me to the wrong line. Like if there was someone standing in the beginning of the line saying like, you go this way, you go this way. And they would sometimes say like, lady, like with a very big question mark at the end, and point me toward the ladies queue, and I would be like, no, I'm a man. And then they would say, okay, so then it's this way. and none of them questioned me. And that was something that actually felt really euphoric, to like stand in a men's line, not being questioned by anyone, and then being searched by a man. And this was something that I did not think would feel euphoric. So before, standing in a security line, knowing that I'm perceived as a girl, and being touched by a male security guard, that has felt really, really bad. But now, standing in the men's line among men, knowing that I'm perceived as a guy and having a man touch me, that felt really euphoric. And I never knew that having a man touched my bum would feel euphoric, but it did. While this was a euphoric experience for me, I know that it's not for everyone. I interviewed a trans man called Jaguar, and he talked about how he didn't enter like any public buildings throughout his whole adolescence because of these security lines. And if you're non-binary or if you don't pass, I mean, I know this can be so dysphoric for so many people. So I'm not saying it's a good system, and I'm just lucky that it was a good experience for me, but I know that it will not be for everyone. I also want to say something about the few times when people like found out that I'm trans, when I told someone I was a guy but then had to show them my passport, which still says female. And while that was scary, all of the people that I had to show my passport to, they didn't do anything about it. And people kept calling me sir. For example, when I checked into hostels and checked the mail box and then had to show them my passport, which says female, they still kept calling me sir. So they were very nice about this whole thing, and I was never like scared or anything. One thing that like every person who travels to India talks about is the staring. So a lot of people in India stare a lot. Like when you walk down the street, people stare at you because you look different, because you're white or because you're black or because you're East Asian. I met some people whose partners are from the eastern part of India, where they generally look a bit more East Asian. They are stared at a lot, even though they are Indian. So people just stare at people who look different. And I just want to mention that in this video because I think it's a lot of us people who look queer or who are perceived as queer, we are used to being stared at home, and usually not for good reasons. Here we might be stared at because we look different, because we're queer, and you never know what that stare might lead to. So going to India and being stared at not because you look queer, but because you're white or black or East Asian or whatever, that might trigger like dysphoria and might trigger this feeling of feeling unsafe, and where will this staring lead to? Again, very uncomfortable. I just wanted to mention that because in some way I think it's relevant for like the specific trans experience, even though it's not for them. For us, it might have something like to do with our transness in our minds. The last thing I want to talk about is something that I thought was so cute. Like wherever I went, I saw guys holding hands, or guys embracing each other, or guys just touching each other. And while I know that the majority of things that I saw this happening, it was probably between straight guys, because it's just culturally a very common way of showing affection to each other, or showing that you like each other. You touch each other, or you embrace each other, and that's so beautiful. And in Sweden that wouldn't happen. Like straight guys don't touch each other, or if they do, it's very, very rare. And here, that leads to gay couples also not showing so much affection, because they know that if they do, they will stand out a lot and people will immediately know they're gay. And you never know what that might lead to. But what I heard from some Indian gay couples is that there, because all the guys walk around holding hands, gay couples also walk around holding hands openly, because that doesn't mean that they're gay. And they never have to be scared that that might, escalate or lead to something. So I just thought that that's really beautiful. It's something that the straight people do that somehow helps the gay community being themselves. Unintentionally, but still, I just found that beautiful. And for me, it felt really encouraging to just walk around seeing guys holding hand. It felt like I was somehow validated in my identity, even though it wasn't that. But still, I just loved walking around seeing guys holding hands. Okay, to sum up, these were just some examples of what made my experience unique in India as a transgender person, I think. I don't know if it's relevant, but I just wanted to mention them. And I would say that, yes, there were moments that I felt really, really uncomfortable, and moments where I felt dysphoric, and moments where I felt really euphoric because of their way of handling things. But while I felt uncomfortable a lot of times, or sometimes, I never felt unsafe. I never felt like people were hostile or that things would escalate into something or something like that. I don't want to end the video with like, yeah, go to India, it's an amazing country as a transgender person, because I can't say that. But I had a really good experience, and I guess I wish people would give them a chance and go there, because India is amazing. If you enjoyed watching that video, please like, comment, subscribe and share the video. I really appreciate you showing your love in that way. If you also want to support the channel financially, that's possible via Patreon, but really no pressure. See you next time!